And hello and welcome to another episode of Endurance Hero Bite-Sized Interviews. Today we have with us my coach, my mountaineering coach, Mark Postle. And this is the person who's actually number crunching all my workouts, who is giving me the workouts, who is my coach and my a lot of times my inspiration, and gives me a lot of guidance and keeps me on track with my goal to climb Denali this year. Mark has been a climber since the late 80s, and he has been instructing and guiding mountaineering since 94. He is based in California but spends a lot of time in Argentina, Alaska, Wyoming, guiding. He has climbed in Antarctica, the European Alps, the Himalaya range, and ascended a number of really, really big mountains. And Mark is also an avid technical climber, an international adventure traveler and photographer. So welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your coaching and support. My first question to you is, why do you do what you do? What motivates you?
I really enjoy being in the outdoors. I like working with people a lot, and the guiding and the coaching is a career path that allows me to sort of combine those two things. I've always been interested in endurance sports and athletics, kind of on a personal level, and then my experience with having climbed in this terrain and on these peaks that a lot of my athletes are looking to go do is a nice marriage of my interest in the athletics, but my experience in having been to that those places and done those things.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite place in the world to climb?
I have several favorites. The past several winters I've gone down to Antarctica and worked, and that is just such a remote environment that it's pretty special, and you just don't get that feeling anywhere else because you're one of really just a handful of people that are on the entire continent, and no matter how remote you are anywhere else in the world, you don't really have that feeling because that's not the case. So I think that's pretty special just from a wilderness standpoint. But I've also done a lot of work over the years in the Tetons in Wyoming. And that's just such a great range for people who maybe are early in their climbing careers, because there's a lot of really approachable mountaineering objectives there. And I do get a lot out of working there in the summers. It's just a great range to take people into. And it's a really approachable range because it's not a huge mountain range. You can get pretty close and you get right into the mountains right away. They're very steep and they rise right out of the valley floor. So I think aesthetically and just experientially for people, that's a great place to work.
They're beautiful mountains. My mom is a geographer, and she told me when we first saw them together that they were formed in a unique way that makes them look like they're bursting out of the ground instead of kind of gently sloping,
right,
appearing from the earth. So Mark, when you're working with athletes or people who have these big objectives ahead of them, and you certainly work with a lot of people who want to climb big mountains, what is the key mindset that you work to develop with them in order for them to stay on track and achieve their goals?
I think it can be challenging with people because you have these really long-term training cycles that ultimately are going to end in a single day, a single summit day eventually, and it's hard for people to kind of envision what they're doing, this morning or this evening being useful, 6, 8, sometimes 12 months from now down the road. And so I try to get people to think of it as basically like building a house and understanding that when you build a house, anybody who's tried to build a house or have one built knows it doesn't go quickly. There's a way that you go about it that's very methodical, and that each thing that you're doing is very important to the end goal. And that every day, early on, maybe you're building the foundation, or eventually you're actually building the house, and that each thing that you do is a little brick that you put in. And in the very short term that day, one brick might not be that impressive and it might not seem like it matters that much, but you do that for a week, you do that for a month, you do that for 3 months, and you see all the progress. And it ends up that it is extremely valuable, over this time frame. So I try to get people to understand that each day that they put in, each workout is just like another little brick that they're putting towards, building the whole house. And it is a hard thing for people to stay on track sometimes. It does take work. Yeah. And everybody's a little different.
Yeah, and when you're talking about bricklaying, it's a very beautiful analogy. It's interesting. But with bricklaying, there could be a way to shortcut it. Like you could hire a bunch of workers and you can lay 12 bricks in a day. But we, as athletes, as people pursuing our goals, can only do so much in a day. How do you kind of convey, or how do you help people stay motivated to do each brick a day with joy and with the experience of actually, okay, I know that this is about climbing a mountain, but right. I'm going to lay like 300 bricks here, and I might as well enjoy the process of becoming a good bricklayer. I might enjoy the process of becoming an endurance athlete, not just checking off a summit off the box. Like, how do you work with people to get them to enjoy what they're doing and really fall in love with it?
It is challenging. And your point is an excellent one in that when you're training, especially for these, for any athletic endeavor, but especially for these endurance goals, there is no shortcut. It really ends up, in the end of the day, it's about doing the right amount of volume very consistently over a fairly long period of time. And that is not always what people want to hear. So first of all, you have to have that conversation with folks in the beginning, so they don't have any unrealistic expectations, because it is a long-term process, and it is about being very consistent day to day. I think with the motivation side, it's important to get a feel for someone's individual personality, because everybody's different, and try and really tap into what they enjoy doing. There is a certain set of parameters, like, people do need to do certain workouts that require going out in certain kinds of terrain, etc. But, we have athletes that come from different athletic backgrounds, and they already have things that they do that they really enjoy. Some people like to ski tour and they really enjoy that. I have a climber who is really into cycling, and while he can't go out and ride his bike every day to train for the mountain, you can incorporate some of that into their training. So it's really about tapping into the things that they enjoy doing, the terrain that they have access to, because geographically people are living all over the world that we're working with. So you try and get a feel for those. And then just the pacing and the kind of workouts that they're doing. Some people need a little more variety in their training to stay motivated. And some people don't need that much. So, honestly, sometimes I'm tweaking the workouts, not because necessarily physiologically this new variation is going to be that much better, but because I know it will be more motivating for the person and they will actually do it. And we sort of talk about, what's the best possible workout that you can program for someone. And a lot of times it doesn't necessarily have to do what's the best for them at the moment. It's what they will actually go do. You can program anything, and if someone doesn't go do it, then it's not useful to anyone. So you have to get a feel for someone's personality and then tap into their natural, desires for training and really try and funnel it that way.
So the best workout is the workout you actually do.
100%. That's a given. And that is tricky for people, and makes it a little tricky as a coach. But I sometimes see people, they have a lot going on in their lives. A lot of the athletes I coach, they're maybe busy on the career side, busy on the family side. Some people it's both. And honestly, when you get into these bigger volume training cycles that a lot of the people I happen to be coaching right now are in, because they have big spring goals, sometimes it's just overwhelming for folks just to, Like I had a gentleman the other day that did 6 hours on the treadmill.
Wow.
Like just got on the treadmill. He had his boots on. He was carrying a little bit of weight in his pack, and he just no intervals, just steady state, 6 hours on the treadmill. And basically because of his work and some weather things conspired against him, that was the thing to do. Yeah. And that can be daunting for people to see, on the training plan. They get the email today, 6 hours on the treadmill.
I get those emails from you. I'm like, oh, at least 4 hours on a big hill somewhere. Okay.
and so you really have to, tap into people's personality. And sometimes it takes a bit of prodding, like sometimes I know that people got an email, I know that they read it, and I'll also send them a text, like, hey, I know it says 6 hours today, and I know that's a big number for you, but just go in and do the best you can. And there are times that, this gentleman did do all 6 hours, but sometimes people get out there and it's just too much, or they're not feeling it, and they do half of what was prescribed, right? And that's not ideal, of course, but I would so much rather somebody go out and just give it their best and get something done than just be overwhelmed with whatever it is and give up and not do anything. So to your point, it's, the best workout is the one you go actually do. So I always tell people, if it seems daunting, just go out and get started and give it your best shot. And sometimes you trim it a little short. Sometimes you're having a good day. Maybe you do a little extra. That's okay. But just, lace up your shoes, put on your skis, whatever it calls for, and just start and just see how it goes.
And that's so beautiful. I remember you coaching me. I had a freak out moment in Mexico when I realized that our 2 summit days for the 2 volcanoes were going to be so close together, less than 48 hours apart. And I just was wiped out. The other climber had quit. It was a question of whether I'd go with a guide or not go with a guide. And I remember calling you and saying, well, is this, I'm going to hurt myself? Like, am I freaking out too much? And you said, just go out and see how far you can go. And that relieved so much pressure off of me, out of that compulsion. Oh, I either have to climb it, achieve the summit, or be a failure. You helped me see it as an additional benefit of being in altitude, additional benefit of, going on variable terrain, on, practicing my crampons on crappy ice. And just, it was a great gift. And I really appreciate it, because it was, I was stuck in my mind. And my last question to you, Mark, is what are some traits, some traits that we can develop as endurance athletes in our minds that help us help us succeed without having, an amazing coach like you by our side all the time? What are some of the most important traits that we should develop?
I think one of the most important is just consistency. I think because we're creatures of habit for the most part, if you can just get consistency with training, whatever that looks like for you as part of your life, that really helps people continue to train and continue to be successful. And for a lot of the people that I work with, what that means is making training a priority in the schedule of their daily flow. Because a lot of the people I work with, they are busy people and they're successful in a lot of what they do. And they have a fairly regimented schedule, right? And, if you have a business meeting at a certain time, or you have to do something with your children at a certain time, or your spouse, they have it in their schedule and they do it. And so if they treat their training and their, athletic goals just like any other part of their professional or personal life, they are successful. And so if that means, writing it on your calendar at 8 a.m. to 9:30 on this day, I'm going to do it, and they do that every day, then they succeed. And, if they have to get everybody on board, if it's the other members of their family, the other members of their business life, whatever it is, they know that this is on the calendar, this is a priority. And for a lot of people, it seems like that looks like training first thing in the morning. They make it the priority. They get up at whatever time they have to make that happen, the appointed hour. They do it first thing, and then it's done for the day. They don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Because it seems like if you let it slide to the end of the day, then you keep pushing it back, and and life happens for everyone. You have these little unexpected things come up during the day. You just push back more, and at the end of the day, you're just too tired, or it's too late because it's dark, or whatever it is. So I think making it part of your regular schedule, developing those good habits around training, and for a lot of people, just doing it first thing in the morning is really rewarding. And then you feel good all day because you've gotten it done. You feel a sense of accomplishment before you've started anything else, and your body feels good. So I think those are the people I see be really successful.
I think that's beautiful too, because then you resist. There's not the need to catch up. There's not the urge to catch up, and catching up often looks like being a weekend warrior and then pushing yourself too hard and enduring yourself, trying to kind of lay a bunch of bricks all at once.
Right. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure having you, and I really enjoy working with you. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, you as well. Thanks.